I'll go ahead and start the recording. So welcome everyone to today's NAJ Advocacy Mentoring session. It's an important time right now and there's a lot happening. So especially when we think about the GWEPs. So we're very glad that you could join us today, and we have a special thanks to Brian Lindbergh, who has a presentation prepared, and then time for questions and thoughts as well if you have those. So I will go ahead and share Brian's presentation with everyone. Get back to the first slide. Does that look right, Brian? Welcome.
Yeah, you can go to the second slide if you'd like.
All right. All right. Should I go ahead?
Okay, great. Yeah, Kathy, do you have anything to add at this point? I will take that as a no, the silence. We may be on mute. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Brian Lindbergh, and I'm the NAJ Public Policy Advisor in Washington, which means I help with programs like this. I do lobbying, I help with testimony, and various other aspects of keeping track of what's going on in Washington, sharing that with NAJ leadership and the membership so that we can do the appropriate advocacy as needed. Let me start by saying I got a kick out of the email from Catherine about today's webinar, because the way it showed up on my computer, the subject line was "Help Stop Trump." So I know we need to be bipartisan, and we always are, but frankly, that was quite an accurate statement, because the president has in his budget proposed to eliminate the GWEPs and most of the professional healthcare education programs run by HRSA. So we really do need to put our energies, our time, our resources, and our focus in stopping that from happening. And that is one of the reasons we're having these series of webinars and the one today. Today I'll cover the budget and appropriations situation and the challenge we face, and talk about how your advocacy and education of your members of Congress could make a difference, really, in keeping the GWEPs alive. So let me go to the page that has the budget and appropriations where we are now. There's our leadership team. Okay, let me start first with the fiscal year 2017 appropriations. Congress finally passed and the president signed on May 5th the bill that funds the rest of the fiscal year 2017. That fiscal year goes through September 30th of 2017, this coming September. It included $38.737 million for the GWEPs, or I'll say GWEPs once, so that if people prefer that, they know I'm not going to say it both ways each time. I say GWEPs. Anyway, not jumping to the next slide right now. Well, we could jump to the next slide if you'd like to. Included on this slide, you'll see the GWEPs are listed on the slide as geriatric. So you can see the pointer there. So that's where we are. And it's the same amount of money we've received for the last several years. And I won't go into the details, but when the GWEPs were created, previously we had some money from Title VII and Title under Comprehensive Geriatric Education, and this line item, and they merged them, and that's the amount they came up with, and that's been steady from the appropriators for the last couple years. To speak a little bit now about the next year we're talking about, we have already been very much involved in fiscal year 2018. That's the the fiscal year that starts October 1st, obviously. The president sent up a skinny budget. That was a short version because he got into office. He didn't have time to do the full budget. He had to look at things. He recently sent up his full budget, and his full budget, suffice it to say, attacks non-defense discretionary programs, which include the GWEPs, HRSA, and many human service programs, are proposed to be eliminated. We're not a select group. It's pretty big. He ends the low-income energy assistance program. He would end the social services block grant program. He would end the SHIPs, which do state health insurance counseling assistance for Medicare beneficiaries. So there's a lot of things chopped. Defense isn't cut; it's actually increased, and you can see basically it's a movement of a lot of resources from human services over to defense. So we've turned to the FY 2018 budget, and the process really begins, if you will, with the president's budget proposal, which just came out. But the appropriations committees have been already doing some work. A lot of folks say that the president's budget is dead on arrival in Congress because they're just not going to change the funding levels as drastically as he suggested. But my view is that we have to work extremely hard to make sure we're not one of the programs that the Republicans in the Congress decide should be cut back or eliminated based on the president's suggestions. They won't do everything he said, but trust me, some of the things he proposed, some of the drastic cuts will take place, and we need to make sure that the GWEPs and HRSA funding is not part of that. The House and the Senate are holding hearings already on the 12 subcommittees that are part of the appropriations committees. Okay, so there's a House and a Senate Appropriations Committee. They have 12 subcommittees. They write their own bills on various aspects of the government. What we spend our time paying attention to and working with the folks over there on is the Labor, Health and Human Services, Education, and Related Agencies Subcommittee. And there's one of those in the House and one of those in the Senate. This year it's predicted that the House will start the process by passing their 12 individual bills out of committee and putting them all in a big package like they just passed for FY 2017. So they won't wait till the end of the year and have to do it that way. They're just going to start out by putting all of them in one bill, and they hope to get that bill passed by the August recess. This would save a lot of time, because why take all of those 12 bills to the House floor, try and pass them when they know in the long run they're going to just have to cut a deal with the Senate anyway on appropriations. I should warn you that even when things look like they're moving later in the summer, it's possible the president has already suggested, because he didn't get his way in the FY 2017 omnibus appropriations bill, that he thinks Congress should go ahead, if they can't come to agreement, the Republicans and the Democrats, we should let the government shut down, particularly if he can't get the cuts he wants and the increases in defense. So we're looking at a potential for a very interesting fall. I just want to note the chart that I shared with you there, and you'll be able to access this at a later time for yourself. The next page after the chart are the footnotes that describe the reason, the various funding levels and such. Catherine, could you move ahead to, okay, there we go. So that you can look at it at your leisure, but it describes some of the things that have happened. So let's go to the next page. that says appropriations requests on the top. Currently, you see we're funded, rounding off a bit, at $38.7 million. Our request for fiscal year 2018 is at least $51 million. This amount of money would, this would be going towards the new grant cycle for the GWEPs. And in that cycle, this amount of money would allow for 8 new GWEP centers if they were funded at the similar rate to what they are now, and it would provide $100,000 to each GWEP site to create a GACA. So now how that would be defined by HRSA, we don't know, but if they got those resources, and there was potentially some language in the appropriations bill that described what they wanted, they might take this route. They could also create 10 new GWEPs and have fewer GACAs. I mean, it's just, that might not be defined in the appropriations bill. That's another issue. If we were fortunate enough to get the funding level we're requesting. So let's go to the next slide, please. We have submitted testimony for NAJ to both the House and the Senate subcommittees on labor HHS, as I described them. We have begun going to meetings on Capitol Hill with the Friends of HRSA Coalition and the Elder Care Workforce Alliance on behalf of the GWEPs and HRSA funding. HIPNIC, which is the Health Professions and Nursing Education Coalition, has not started their latest round of meetings for the fiscal year 2018. But historically, I go to those meetings and I make the pitch for the GWEPs. And so I will do that again this year. So there is a lot of activity going on. There is, as you have seen from some of our communications, we've been asking you to get involved. There will be in Washington, D.C. on June 15th, the Elder Care Workforce Alliance, in collaboration with the American Geriatric Society and with some help from NAJ, is doing a Hill Day around GWEP funding, and we'll have a number of GWEP representatives here in Washington going up to meetings on the Hill, and I'll be doing that with them as well. And what we would like to do now is to talk a little bit about how you could help in this effort. It kind of begs the question, but if the GWEPs won't jump in and fight for their programs, obviously we have to worry about who would. Many of the healthcare professionals and caregivers and older adults themselves are not in the position to jump into this fight for the GWEPs and HRSA funding that we're in. We know the programs better. We know who they serve. We understand the value even within the community of the individuals who are employed, who are educated, etc. And of course the value to older adults and their caregivers. So we need to step up. Hopefully you've seen Kathy Heyer's emails requesting you to get involved in advocacy, and we will keep asking and providing additional resources. But here's what we're asking today, for you to help us protect the GWEPs by playing a role back home. So if you could go to the next slide, Catherine, sorry. Kathy and Catherine here. We are asking you to make a call send an email to your 2 senators and the member of the House that represents you, asking them to support our request. If you feel it's a viable thing to do, ask them to visit your GWEP site during the next, when they're home the next time, which is more than likely. I mean, they come home for weekends. If you can have them do it on a weekend and you can pull that off, that's great. But otherwise, the week of July 4th is a recess, and that's a period where they could come and participate. You could show them what you talked, meet with them at your site, or meet with them in their office if you think that's more appropriate. We're very flexible about that. Whatever you think might be the most convincing way to get them on board supporting the GWEPs, we think that July 4th would be a good opportunity. That recess week, or they call it a district work period, could be any day that week that you could do it, and invite them to come. If they can't come, say you would like to meet them in their offices. When you send that note, I suggest that you include a copy of the NAJ House or Senate testimony, I guess, depending on if you're asking a senator if she will come to your university or wherever you happen to be located to learn about the program. Send the Senate testimony. If it's a House member, send the House testimony. When you're doing this, we want you, if you wouldn't mind, to look at a document that we are going to make. We've sent it to you already, but Catherine will send it out again, and it's the NAJ representative chart for the 115th Congress. And that chart shows you the state. It has the organization that has the GWEP, and then in most cases I have the program director only. You may not be a program director, but I just didn't have all the staff people. And then the member of Congress and the contact information on how to get this whole process going. If you prefer to call the local office, starting with that, simply go to the website and look at the office that's closest to you. I didn't do that, but you just go to the website. The number there is the Washington, D.C. office. If you call that, of course, they can connect you with whatever district office is closest to you if you tell them where you are. In addition, there are numbers, either 1 or 2 or no number, next to the members that are listed there. The reason we did that is just to remind you of the relative importance of some of these members. Now, anyone can make a difference. If someone raises a real fuss because the GWEP in his or her district is going to be eliminated, they might not even have to be on the appropriations committee to get that fixed. We don't, I'm not saying everyone isn't important, but the ones that are numbered 1 and 2, 1 being the highest, these are folks that play significant roles on the appropriations committee or on the in the leadership itself of Congress, and therefore it would weigh heavily if they stood up and took a stand against ending the GWEPs. For example, if you have Nancy Pelosi's ear, she's the ranking Democrat in the House. If you have Mitch McConnell's ear, from the majority leader, the Republican leader of the Senate, these people also obviously have significant clout. But you will see from the key that we put at the top of this chart, whether your member is on the Appropriations Committee and also if they're on the Labor HHS subcommittee, which will write the bill that decides if we get funding. So I just wanted to highlight that. And we would really appreciate it if you would let us know if you've contacted a member and met with them, what the response has been. That would be really helpful because, for example, if I actually do run into members sometimes, and I do hill visits on behalf of NASH. So if I know, for example, that you've met with Senator Whitehouse, for example, from Rhode Island, and I am talking to his staff or see him, I can do a follow-up reminder about that. And of course, after if you are able to meet, or if you have a good communication with them, you want to send them a thank you and all that. But I'm available anytime to help with follow-up and such. I want to say one more thing about the timing. If you can't set something up in the July 4th recess, at least you've gotten them our testimony, and you've asked them specifically, will you support this funding for the GWEPs? And you can always say, would you be willing then to meet with me during the August recess? Now, we want the communications to begin before then, but if you're able to win over members of Congress because they come and meet with you, or you come and go to meet with them over the August recess, that would be fabulous too. So let's see where we are here. If you could go to the next slide, Catherine, that would be great. So anyway, I already covered these things pretty much. The message is, of course, we are asking them to support the NASH request and oppose elimination of the GWEPs, which is in the president's budget. And again, you can decide whether you approach the local or state office before you, or instead of calling the Washington office. Let's see, all of those things I've covered. And then finally, the last couple, let's see, the last page there is, we work real closely with the Elder Care Workforce Alliance, and they have put a bunch of resources. Of course, you've got a lot of things from us, and you can just click back to the emails that Kathy Heyer has sent to you, and you'll see attachments with basic materials around all of this, how to advocate and all that. But if you want additional resources, there's the House and the Senate websites. There's a link here also that we'll be sharing you on this. The last page is the resource page, Catherine. Maybe you put it up, but I might not be. Oh, there it is. Okay. That link goes to a toolkit that the Elder Care Workforce Alliance, which we're a member of, put together, and feel free to use any of that as well. And then finally, just a thank you, and are there any questions that I could attempt to answer?
Brian, this is Kathy. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. I think that it should be helpful. We wanted to make this short, but we certainly want to entertain some questions. Before we actually get the questions done, Catherine, do we know everyone who's on the call? I think we had a couple call-ins that are a little bit later. So can you ask people, Catherine?
Sorry, I should unmute myself. Yeah, if you're on the phone and you are muted, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, this is Jennifer Severance. I'm from the GWEP at the University of North Texas Health Science Center.
Great. Hi, Jennifer.
Hello.
And there's a couple other phone numbers if you're on the phone. All right. That actually might be the only one. The only other thing I see is JAJ0013, if that's your user.
Oh, that's me. That's
okay.
Jennifer. Okay.
Perfect. All right. Other than that, Kathy, I think we pretty much either introduced, got to know everyone.
Okay.
And I should have put my email on this, but it's pretty simple to remember, actually. Brian with an I at consumers.org. Brian at consumers.org. Anytime, feel free to email me, and we could go back and forth by email, or we could set up a time where you could call me and we could chat about either problems you're having getting a meeting, or how to get a meeting, or what you might want to say in the meeting because you're in a situation a little different from others. Whatever it is, I'm happy to help.
Okay, great. And I see that Phil Clark has his hand up. Phil, do you have a microphone? Or...
I do. Can people hear me?
Hi. Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, good. I don't have my video on, but I do have my audio on. So I did have a question, Brian, particularly for you, I guess. I've been involved in this for a few years, as you know, in terms of advocacy and going to the Hill. I know there are some members of Congress that are particularly targeted because they, number one, are in key positions, but number two, may not support these kinds of resource allocations. So I wonder if NAJ is particularly targeting people who will be visited, who are not like Rhode Island delegate members. You know, we're sort of preaching to the choir when we go to talk to them. But I know there are often critical people who are not supporters. Is there going to be an attempt to reach out to those folks particularly?
Yeah, did you have someone in particular in mind, or just more broadly the folks who over the years haven't?
Not particularly, but I know in the past there have been key members of committees who were from, you know, Republican states where there really was not an awareness or support for journalism. Yeah. And they played a key role, disproportionate to perhaps, you know, their state. So maybe there wasn't even a GEC or a GWEP in their state, for example.
Yeah. Let me address that, and a couple things come to mind. First, somewhat related to what you said, is that you remind me of our need to constantly be reinforcing and showing our appreciation to those members who have gone to the mat in the past for us, those who have been part of the process that have provided funding. So even though in some cases, you know, we're preaching to the choir, we even short notes to folks saying, hey, thank you for all your support in the past. If you'd ever like to do a site visit, maybe we could figure out a way to get some positive press for you, or whatever you can do for those who are being supportive would be great. So that just came to mind as you said it. But there are folks who, on if you will, principle, or just like some people will never vote for a tax increase, there are others who just will not support many of the discretionary spending programs, regardless of whether they're doing good in their community. We have been working with our colleagues in our coalitions to identify key members that we think, we kind of categorize them in various ways, but one way to put it would be who we think are educatable, that we think just need to understand that the value of a program like the GWEP is multifaceted, that the small amount of resources that goes into it for training healthcare professionals to serve the growing elderly population more effectively and efficiently, and to support caregivers all of those things are providing significant savings to the nation by way of, avoiding unnecessary hospitalizations and nursing home stays, and just providing care appropriately at home, and all of those things that we need to make sure healthcare professionals understand and do. So we do identify those folks, and in fact, I've gone into meetings with members that really one might identify as a hopeless cause because of their fiscal policies. It's amazing how many times people are just not aware of the programs going on in their states. They might not be aware even that the home delivered meals that are being provided in their community are actually partially funded by federal dollars, things like that. So they hear of Meals on Wheels and they think, oh, that's a local thing. So anyway, we do identify targets, and we are working hard. We have no indication right now that any particular member has taken up the Let's Hurt HRSA bandwagon that the president has pushed forward, but we're very cognizant of the fact that it only takes, a few strong members on a subcommittee to try to kill a program or two. So I'm not sure that's a very specific answer, but we are trying to identify the tough ones and persuade them.
Okay, thanks, Brian. I had a question. You mentioned Senator Whitehouse in Rhode Island, and we're working with his office and also with Senator Reid's office. Are they situated in particularly critical spots that are important?
Well, I would say that they're first of all, they're both have got some seniority now and have been around. Senator Whitehouse, of course, is a strong advocate for the elderly. He spent a lot more of his time working on end of life and that kind of advanced care issues.
Oh, yes.
But Senator Reid, is a key player because he's both on the subcommittee for labor HHS and the full committee, of course. So they're together. They're a very and White House doesn't mind to be outspoken on things. So I think that Jack Reed could be critical in fighting for the GWEPs, and I would say that Sheldon Whitehouse is also. I mean, I know him a little bit. I know them both a little from years of working on various issues, and Senator Whitehouse. If you got his attention, he would also, I think, try to be very helpful.
Okay, well, we've initiated contact through our sort of policy person in our GWEP, but I will follow up and we will redouble our efforts for both of them. Both of them have, in my opinion, had a huge benefit in terms of raising awareness. I can mention Senator Whitehouse in terms of his hearings on palliative care. So we will work hard on that.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm just curious, maybe the group would be interested in hearing, do you want to mention how you've developed a relationship with either office?
Well, we've been in existence for about 20 years, and over those years, we've met multiple times, particularly with Senator Reid, who's been in office longer than Senator Whitehouse. But we have worked with Senator Whitehouse's health policy person in terms of meetings with her several times, and also Senator Reid's staff. But we also have a person working for our GWEP who is a former director of the State Office on Aging and has also worked in Washington in an office. So she has been carefully, she knows them and their staff, and so she's been really reaching out on our behalf with them, and she's a particularly effective advocate because of her policy and governmental background.
Phil, that's a great example of having people work overtime. And I think, you know, I've known you for a long time, and I know you've worked at the state level, and that's what Brian is trying to have all of us realize, that the relationship begins and the staff members do matter. And sometimes they even change, but they are there and they can be our advocates. So thank you for bringing that up.
Well, we know that, and you know, all politics is local, I guess, like Tip O'Neill has said apparently. And so we've been, you know, being in a small state, we feel like we want to have a big impact, not only in our own state but nationally. And so we've been really fortunate to have two senators who have played on the national arena on aging issues, and so we really want to be sure that they know the good things that we're doing. But also at the national level, how critical this is right now in terms of the national funding. So we will definitely be reaching out, and we will let you all know what we've done so you can follow up.
Thank you. And I hope everyone else on the call is willing to do what Brian has said. Does anybody need help understanding those lists, or, you know, with how we do this? Part of what we're trying to do today is to have you do these two things, you know, check on this website, look at the elder tour, you know, workforce, and then now, right now, this week, call or email and talk about the importance of supporting GWEPs, and then make sure that you try to schedule a meeting or a contact during the week of July 4th. And we're going to have another session on July 6th. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Same thing in the afternoon. We're hoping we can do this so we can support each other. And Phil, you can report back on how successful you were.
Well, we will do that. Kathy, you could be on fundraising for NPR and public television. And right now, we need calls from 3 more GWEPs.
I think you're right. We need more GWEPs. So Jennifer, you got to call Texas. And I'm embarrassed. I don't know the Montana or the Wyoming senators. But Brian does. Brian, help us.
What would you like? What would you like?
I was just teasing. I don't know the Montana or I know the Texas senators, but I don't know the Montana or Wyoming senators, and the other people on the calls.
So this is Catherine. I have Phil, thank you. I think that was very helpful, and it's really interesting to hear what years of relationship does. That's really important for those of us who maybe are somewhere a bit younger in GWEP status. Brian, do you have any thoughts or just words for those of us in areas where our legislators might be more closely aligned with Trump? I don't know that they carry particularly hard lines against all discretionary program funding, but I can imagine that could be the case. Just any advice for approaching them?
Yeah, well, I mean, I have my own philosophy about it, and that is that what we saw in the last election, the energy around Trump and Bernie Sanders as well, was a reflection more about people's feeling about, you know, Washington not paying attention and wanting somebody who spoke out loudly against the status quo. And, you know, I could list 10 different things, right? Why people had, you know, I mean, when someone says, oh yeah, I like Trump, but I wouldn't mind Sanders either. I mean, you got to really wonder what's going on, right? So, not that everybody did that, but there was some interesting crossover in how people like these two mavericks. So my view is a lot of people wanted something new. They wanted to shake things up, but they weren't saying, I want to end home delivered meals. I want to end caregiver support. I want to end programs for individuals with disabilities in my community. They weren't saying we shouldn't train doctors to know how to take care of older people. You know what I mean? So I think that's the starting point is, okay. And just for the record, I worked for both Republicans and Democrats on the Hill. So back when I did that, there were a lot more moderate and progressive Republicans, and I happened to work for a couple of them. But nonetheless, we all have to, be. There's very few politicians that we agree with everything they say, and so I find myself appreciating the positions of various parties, including independents. But nonetheless, we've got a situation here where most people who voted for the president had no idea what was going to be in his budget proposal. And so I think where we start is there. And so we make our case for our program and the value of it to our communities and to society and to older adults. And that gets to, basically a number of issues that a member of Congress or a senator who's a Republican cares about. Jobs, making Medicare and Medicaid more efficient and effective, keeping people at home so that we don't waste money having people spending too much time in hospitals and nursing homes. So you guys know the arguments better than I, but I think the opening is really none of the people who vote for either these members or Trump really quite knew what the budget was going to be. And so one can make the argument for any particular line item or program or group of programs that have a particular mission. But I do think that it's true that keeping things local is very helpful too. Explain to them how the impact that you're actually making in the local community and services, and now there are more geriatricians available, those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's helpful, and we'll let you know how it goes sometime, hopefully. And I got a chat from Jason Maloney before we wrap. Jason has a question.
Yeah, and can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Brian, and everybody else for all your work. I really appreciate it. And Brian, my question actually gets to what you were just saying. I was wondering about, not only engaging with our legislators, but also with the lay public, be that, sort of directly as we can or through the media. And if there had been any work on sort of, when you mentioned before the different types of arguments one could make, to understand which of those kind of takeaways is the most impactful to the lay public to sort of underscore the importance of WEP funding, perhaps without mentioning even WEPs explicitly.
Whoa, that's a tough one. I think that I don't know if how far out into the country the dialogue around when the president's budget came out, and the budget actually proposed cutting community services block grants, and they accidentally, the press and others picked up that they were basically ending Meals on Wheels, which was not true. It was ending a grants program that included some money that goes into Meals on Wheels. Okay. But there was a significant uproar, even though one could have said that was partially fake news, because the Older Americans Act funds that primarily, and there's other sources. But so I think to the extent that we can be honest, but can really describe to, like, let's say you would be willing to write an editorial to, your local or, the city or a couple different papers around the state or whatever, whichever you thought would be most effective, where you could put together the case basically that by ending programs like this, we're denying older adults access to the doctors they need and want. I mean, okay, I'm stretching it a little, but it's true in my view, and I think that's the kind of thing. So you can see how one could say, well, the home delivered meals were going to be really hurt by this lack of funding, and it would have hurt, and we don't know still what will happen there. But really, I think we have to translate what we do into more meaningful terms, like you say, to the lay public, or to state officials or grass tops. What we call grass tops are like your local leaders of the church or the government or corporations who actually have clout, who would say, geez, how can I help you? I have a mother or grandfather or whomever that we've been trying to find the right doctor for him or her, and we're struggling because there aren't any people who understand geriatrics around here or whatever. So I do think you're onto something. Like, how do we show the public and some people, locally, statewide, with clout, what we're really doing? We're really training. We're training the trainers, but we're also training a range of healthcare professionals and caregivers to provide the care that our loved ones need. And if we don't do it, they will end up having healthcare professionals who don't know what they're doing. So we really would be denying them the care they need.
That's helpful. I think you actually framed it there in some ways that gives us some good pointers. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Jason, this is Kathy. I've worked on some of these issues, and I think if we had more time, we would talk to you about it. But, you can write letters to the editor. You can write opinion pieces. I think social media is something that, Brian, we've not really discussed, and I'm certainly not a real good person on that. But I think there's other ways that we could get this message out. And I really like your question, because I don't think, Brian, we've been thinking about that. So, Jason, keep coming in and helping us, and we'd love to hear how you're working on this, because you're in a real important state as well. So this is terrific. We promised people that we would be from 3 to 3:45. So, Brian, do you have any closing remarks?
Well, just thank you, everybody, for attending, and hopefully more GWEPs will listen in, because we're going to send out the link to this with the materials that we've mentioned. And thank you, and feel free to call me anytime.
And Brian, again, I want to echo Catherine's gracious thank you to you. And we really appreciate the work you're doing for us and with us. And Catherine, once again, thank you for hosting us. I don't know what we'd do without Zoom. So it's wonderful. And for all of you on the line, please help us go and do those 2 things that you're supposed to do. Phil is teasing me, but we need 3 GWEPs tomorrow to have letters and notes in. So thank all of you for your work and your support. And we really look forward to working with you on this, and mostly supporting the older Americans in this country who really need our work. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, everyone, for getting on.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. We're on it.
I know, Brian. Thanks, Phil. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.